The failed negotiations. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Stellar Confederation stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal and living metal. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the vast circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from 23 different alien species. Each delegation occupied their own section, adapted to their specific atmospheric and gravitational needs. The air itself was a carefully balanced mixture that allowed most species to breathe, though Elena still wore a discreet breathing apparatus hidden beneath her formal diplomatic attire. Elena had been Earth's chief diplomat for 12 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The sheer scale of the assembly was overwhelming. Towering above her were the Krillian delegates, their crystalline bodies refracting light in impossible patterns. To her left, the gaseous ethereal collective swirled and contained energy fields. Directly ahead sat the most powerful faction, the Hegemony Council, led by species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. Supreme Chancellor Mordix of the Hegemony rose from his throne-like seat. He was a member of the ancient Ascendant race, beings who claimed to have achieved perfect evolution. His form was humanoid, but stretched and refined, with skin like polished marble and eyes that glowed with inner fire. When he spoke, his voice resonated through every translation device in the chamber, carrying undertones of absolute authority. "Human representative," Mordix began, his words dripping with condescension. "We have summoned you here to inform you of a decision that has been reached regarding your species' territorial claims. The Stellar Confederation has concluded that humanity's occupation of the Outer Rim colonies is no longer acceptable." Elena felt her heart rate spike, but she kept her expression neutral. These were the colonies that had taken humanity 50 years to establish. 15 worlds where millions of humans had built new lives, developed new technologies, and discovered resources that had transformed human civilization. Most importantly, these worlds contained the quantum crystal deposits that powered humanity's most advanced technologies. Respectfully, Supreme Chancellor Elena replied, "These colonies were established in unclaimed space according to all galactic treaties. Humanity has invested enormous resources and countless lives in developing these worlds. They are not simply territories we can abandon." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the alien delegates. Mordix's expression didn't change, but Elena caught the subtle shift in his posture that indicated growing impatience. "You misunderstand your position. Human," Mordix continued. "These are not negotiations. This is an announcement. Your species has been granted the privilege of voluntary compliance. You have 60 standard galactic days to begin complete evacuation of all human presence from the contested worlds. Any remaining human activity after this deadline will be considered an act of aggression against the Confederation." Elena's diplomatic training kicked in, suppressing her immediate emotional response. "May I ask on what authority the Confederation makes this demand?" The colonies in question were legally established and have operated peacefully for decades. This time, several delegates did laugh aloud. The sound was unsettling, coming from beings whose vocal ranges spanned frequencies humans couldn't normally hear. Mordix gestured with one elongated hand, and a holographic display materialized above the chamber's center. The display showed detailed scans of the human colonies, focusing on the quantum crystal mining operations. The crystals glowed with an inner light, beautiful and clearly valuable. Elena realized with growing dread that this had never been about territorial disputes or legal claims. It was about resources that the Confederation wanted for themselves. "These quantum crystals," announced Delegate Zarthul of the Silicon Hegemony, "are too valuable to remain in the hands of such a primitive species. Your technology is barely 3 centuries old. You lack the wisdom and experience necessary to properly utilize these resources. More advanced civilizations have greater need and better understanding of their potential." Elena straightened, drawing herself up to her full height. Despite being one of the smallest beings in the chamber, she radiated a quiet intensity that made several nearby delegates shift uncomfortably. "And if humanity refuses?" she asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of life support systems seemed to fade. Mordix's glowing eyes fixed on Elena with laser focus. "Refusal is not an option we are prepared to consider," he said. "However, if you force us to take corrective action, we will do so with the full military might of 23 star-faring civilizations. Your entire species would be extinct within a matter of weeks." Elena accessed her neural implant, establishing a secure quantum-encrypted connection to Earth. The response came back in milliseconds, transmitted faster than light through humanity's most advanced communication network. The message was simple but absolute. "I have conferred with my government," Elena announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Humanity's response is unequivocal. We reject your ultimatum. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not surrender our sovereignty. And we will not be intimidated by threats, regardless of their source." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Delegates across the chamber erupted in shocked exclamations, angry chittering, and sounds of disbelief that spanned dozens of different species. Mordix himself seemed momentarily stunned, as if he couldn't process what he had just heard. "You cannot be serious," he finally managed. "We have analyzed your military capabilities extensively. Your entire fleet consists of perhaps 10,000 vessels, most of them converted civilian craft. The Confederation can field over 2 million warships. You would be fighting a war you cannot possibly win." Elena smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she felt truly calm. "Supreme Chancellor, there's something you should understand about humanity. We've been fighting impossible wars for our entire history. It's what we do best." She activated her personal communicator, broadcasting on all frequencies so that every delegate in the chamber could hear. "This is Ambassador Rodriguez to Earth Command. The negotiations have concluded. Implement Protocol 7. Authorization Omega Black. In the depths of space, far beyond the edge of known galactic territories, something ancient began to wake up. The facility was hidden within the event horizon of a controlled black hole, invisible to conventional sensors, and protected by space-time distortions that made it theoretically impossible to reach. For 20 years, humanity's greatest minds had worked here in absolute secrecy, developing technologies that violated every known law of physics. Captain James Morrison stood in the observation deck, watching as the ship that would change galactic history completed its final preparations. The Retribution hung in space before him, and looking at it made his mind hurt. Its hull seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, shifting between states of matter in ways that defied rational explanation. The ship was enormous, larger than anything humanity had ever built. But its exact size was impossible to determine because it seemed to exist in several different scales of reality at once. Morrison was not a typical military officer. At 45, he had spent more time in theoretical physics labs and on ship bridges. His face was marked by the pale complexion of someone who had spent years working in deep space installations, and his eyes held the 1,000-yard stare of a man who had looked too deeply into the fundamental nature of reality. "Status report," he said into his communicator. "All systems online?" "Captain," responded Dr. Sarah Chun, the ship's chief science officer. "The void drive is stable. Weapon systems are fully charged. The Nemesis AI has completed integration with all ship functions." Morrison nodded slowly. The AI was perhaps the most frightening aspect of the entire project. They had built it using principles discovered in the ruins of a civilization that had been extinct for millions of years. The beings who created this technology had apparently transcended physical existence entirely, leaving behind only mathematical concepts encoded in quantum foam. How long until we reach Confederation space? Morrison asked. At maximum void drive velocity, approximately 6 hours, Chun replied. The AI calculates a 97.3% probability of total tactical success. Morrison turned away from the window. Throughout the ship, a crew of 500 worked at stations that looked more like artistic sculptures than conventional controls. Each person had been selected not just for their technical skills, but for their psychological profile. They needed people who could function effectively while using technology that their minds couldn't fully comprehend. Open a channel to all hands, Morrison ordered. Asterisk. The communications system activated, carrying his voice throughout the ship. This is Captain Morrison. In a few hours, we will engage an enemy force that outnumbers us roughly 4,000 to 1. They expect us to surrender. They believe that superior numbers and conventional tactics will guarantee their victory. They are about to learn why that was a mistake. He paused, looking out at the twisted geometry of the ship's interior corridors. The Retribution is not just a warship. It is proof that humanity refuses to accept limitations imposed by others. When they threaten our families, our homes, our right to exist as free beings, we don't negotiate. We don't compromise. We show them exactly why underestimating humanity is the last mistake they'll ever make. Morrison settled into the captain's chair, which had been designed to interface directly with his nervous system. As soon as he made contact, the ship's AI began integrating with his consciousness. He could feel the Retribution's vast power, its impossible weapons, its ability to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. For a moment, he felt like a god. Then he remembered what they were fighting for, and he felt human again. Engage the void drive, he ordered. Time to introduce the galaxy to humanity's nightmare. The Retribution vanished from normal space, slipping between dimensions like a ghost. Behind it, the secret facility continued its work, preparing additional horrors for a galaxy that had made the fatal mistake of threatening Earth's children. Asterisk. The terror unleashed Admiral Vextar of the Confederation. First Fleet stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, surveying what he believed to be the most impressive military formation in galactic history. Spread across the void before him were 5,000 warships, representing the combined might of the Stellar Confederation. Massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets floated alongside carrier vessels launching clouds of fighter craft. The fleet stretched across millions of cubic kilometers of space, a testament to the power that had kept galactic peace for millennia. Vextar was a career military officer from the hegemony's warrior caste. His species had evolved from apex predators, and their society still reflected that heritage. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with armor-like skin and 4 arms that could manipulate weapons with deadly precision, he had never experienced defeat in 40 years of military service. This engagement would be his easiest victory yet. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "we have entered the outer boundary of human space. Long-range sensors detect their defensive fleet taking position near the 4th planet. Approximately 8,000 vessels, mostly converted civilian craft with basic military upgrades." Vextar's mandibles clicked together in what his species used as laughter. 8,000 ships against our 5,000. They actually believe numbers will compensate for technological inferiority. This will be over in hours. The human defensive fleet was indeed pathetic by Confederation standards. Most ships were converted cargo haulers or mining vessels with weapons mounted in whatever space could be found. A few purpose-built warships anchored the formation, but even these were primitive by galactic standards. The humans had arranged their forces around the planet Kepler-4, 42b, one of their most important colonies, and the primary quantum crystal mining operation in this sector. "Open the general communication channel," Vextar ordered. "All frequencies. I want every human in this system to hear what comes next. The communication array activated, broadcasting Vextara's message across the entire system. His translated voice reached millions of human colonists, their families huddled in underground shelters, waiting to learn their fate. "Human defenders," Vextar announced. "This is Admiral Vextar of the Stellar Confederation First Fleet. You are vastly outgunned and completely surrounded. Your government has rejected our generous offer of peaceful evacuation. You now face the consequences of that foolish decision. Surrender immediately, and we will allow civilian populations to evacuate safely. Continue to resist, and every human in this system will be classified as a military target." The response came from Admiral Lisa Wong, commander of the Human Defensive Force. Her image appeared on Vextar's main screen, showing a middle-aged woman in a worn military uniform. She looked tired but determined, with the calm expression of someone who had already accepted whatever came next. "Admiral Vextar," Wang replied, "humanity appreciates your concern for our civilian population. However, we must respectfully decline your offer. These colonies were built by human hands, defended by human blood, and they will remain under human control. If you want them, you'll have to take them by force." Vextar's tactical display showed the human fleet beginning to advance. 8,000 ships moving in formation toward his vastly superior force. It was either the bravest or the most stupid military decision he had ever witnessed. "So be it," Vextar replied. "All ships, prepare for—" His words were interrupted by an alarm that had never sounded on the Eternal Dominion before. The proximity warning system was detecting something impossible. According to the sensors, a massive object had just appeared directly behind the Confederation fleet. Not jumped through hyperspace, not decloaked from stealth systems, but simply materialized from nothing. "Report." Vextar barked. "Admiral, sensors are detecting one vessel approximately 2 kilometers aft of our position. Configuration unknown. Mass readings are ... inconsistent. The object appears to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Asterisk, on the main screen, the tactical display showed a single contact that seemed to flicker between different sizes and positions. Whatever it was defied every known law of physics. Vextar had seen stealth technology, dimensional gates, and reality-warping weapons. This was something else entirely. "Unknown vessel," Vextar transmitted. "Identify yourself immediately." The response came not through conventional communication channels, but as a direct transmission that bypassed all their security systems and spoke directly into the mind of every being in the Confederation. "Fleet, this is Captain James Morrison of the Terran vessel Retribution. You have threatened human colonies. You have endangered human lives. You have made the mistake of believing that humanity would negotiate from a position of weakness. You were wrong." The Retribution became visible as it shifted into normal spacetime. Vextar stared at it in growing horror. The ship was impossible. Its hull seemed to be made of crystallized void, darker than the space around it, but somehow still visible. Structures that might have been weapons arrays twisted through dimensions that his eyes couldn't properly track. The vessel radiated menace like a living thing. "One ship," Vextar whispered. Then louder, "One ship against 5,000. Human, your bravery is admirable, but your tactical judgment is non-existent. All vessels, target the unknown and fire at will." 5,000 warships opened fire simultaneously. The void around the Retribution lit up with energy beams, plasma bolts, fusion missiles, and exotic weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. The barrage lasted for 30 seconds, pouring enough firepower to destroy an entire planet into the space where the human vessel floated. When the energy dissipated, the Retribution remained completely untouched. It hadn't even deployed defensive shields. The weapons had simply passed through it as if it weren't there. "Impossible." Vextar breathed. Morrison's voice returned. "Now, carrying an undertone of something that made Vextar species' ancient predator instincts scream warnings. Your weapons cannot touch us because we have transcended your understanding of reality. We exist in dimensions your science cannot reach. We wield forces your technology cannot comprehend. And now, we will demonstrate why threatening humanity was the last mistake your species will ever make. The Retribution opened fire. Asterisk. The weapons it used had no names in any galactic language. They manipulated the fundamental forces that held matter together, reaching across dimensional barriers to strike targets that should have been unreachable. The first Confederate ship to be hit simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality so completely that even the memory of its existence began to fade. More ships died in ways that violated everything Vextar understood about warfare. Some aged millions of years in seconds, crumbling to cosmic dust. Others were crushed by gravitational forces that compressed their entire mass into singularities. A few simply inverted, turning inside out across multiple dimensions simultaneously. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Vextar screamed. Scatter formation. Maximum speed. The fleet tried to retreat, but the Retribution was everywhere at once. It existed in multiple positions simultaneously, attacking from angles that didn't exist in normal space. Its weapons reached through time itself, striking ships before they were fired. The EI that controlled the vessel, the entity called Nemesis, learned and adapted with each engagement, developing new tactics faster than organic minds could comprehend. But the physical destruction was only the beginning. As ships died around him, Vextar realized that the Retribution was broadcasting everything. The images of Confederate vessels being systematically annihilated were being transmitted across every communication channel in known space. Every planet, every station, every ship in the galaxy was witnessing the Confederation's most powerful fleet being destroyed by a single human vessel. The psychological impact was devastating. Species that had never known fear began to panic. Governments that had ruled for millennia started broadcasting surrender messages. The very foundations of galactic civilization were crumbling as they watched the impossible become reality. Within 6 hours, the first fleet was gone. 5,000 ships, millions of crew members, the pride of 23 civilizations, erased from existence. Only Vextar's flagship remained, drifting powerless in space with its weapons offline and engines dead. The admiral sat in his command chair, staring at tactical displays that showed nothing but empty space where his fleet had been. The Retribution materialized directly in front of the Eternal Dominion, close enough that its impossible geometry filled the viewport. Morrison's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. Admiral Vextar, you are the sole survivor of this engagement. You will return to Confederation space and deliver humanity's message to your leaders. Tell them that this was not a battle. This was a demonstration. Tell them that humanity possesses weapons that their science cannot explain and their military cannot defeat. Tell them that any further threat to human colonies will result in the complete annihilation of their civilizations. Vextar found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. What? What are you? We are what happens when you threaten our families, Morrison replied. We are what happens when you mistake our desire for peace as a sign of weakness. We are the nightmare that species like yours create when you assume that age equals superiority, and that numbers equal victory. The Retribution began to fade from normal space, preparing to return to whatever dimension it called home. Morrison's final words reached every being in the galaxy through quantum-entangled communication networks that spanned the known universe. Let this message reach every star system, every planet, every civilization that considers itself our superior. Humanity sought peace. We offered cooperation. We extended friendship to species that repaid our trust with threats and ultimatums. You chose to make us your enemy. You chose to awaken something that your ancient legends speak of only in whispers. You have summoned humanity's true nature, and now you will live with the consequences. 3 days later, Supreme Chancellor Mordex stood before the same assembly hall where Elena Rodriguez had delivered humanity's refusal. But now, instead of 23 allied species, only 7 representatives remained. The others had withdrawn from the Confederation, their governments too terrified to risk further association with the organization that had provoked humanity's wrath. The Stellar Confederation formally recognizes human sovereignty over all claimed territories, Mordex announced, his voice hollow with defeat. We withdraw all demands for colonial evacuation. We pledge non-interference in human space. We ... We humbly request that humanity accept our apology and agree to peaceful coexistence. Elena Rodriguez received the message from her office on Earth. She looked out her window at the blue sky and green forests of humanity's home world, thinking of all the colonies that would now remain safe, all the families that would never have to flee their homes. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the Retribution waited and watched, ready to remind the universe that humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction knew no limits. Asterisk.